This is TWiT.
This is a report from Mac Rumors. Apple's exploring a new keyboard design to I hope they are.
It's patents. This is patents, though, right?
So
yeah,
what's
the reality of it?
Yeah.
Last year we saw a patent where Apple said, what if the touch bar was the entire keyboard? And this patent is, okay, what if the touch bar was not the entire keyboard, but what if we still made it like a glass panel? My podcast co-host, Mike Hurley, made the joke yesterday. It's like, oh, you don't like dust in your keyboards, huh? What if there was no keyboard?
It's the what is it? It's the conduction stovetop of keyboards.
Yeah,
right? It's all
yeah. So the idea here is that it's a glass panel, but you can feel the keys, and they might actually move a little bit.
Molded in the shape of a keyboard. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the picture of Andy's face, horrified.
Well, like you can plot Apple's history with keyboards, right? Like, and this is the scary part: is the question, all the controversy about the MacBook keyboard. The question is, did Apple look at that and say, "Oh, we went too far," or did Apple say, "Aha, we did not go far enough"?
Or did they decide a long time ago that they were going to this place, and they just kept on making the keys thinner and thinner and thinner to train us on?
It could be, right? So that's for me, that's the question, because I have no doubt there are people in Apple who are like, how can we reinvent the keyboard and eliminate travel and make it this completely new thing?
I have to admit, I'm fooled by my trackpad every time. It's not moving. It feels like it's moving because of the haptic engine. Could you do that with keys?
Possibly.
I might feel, I know Andy and I won't be happy, but...
And I won't be happy either.
Oh,
and
you
a
like a real
lot of people.
keyboard?
Oh yeah, I like a real clicky keyboard.
Yeah, my home keyboard is as much movement as possible.
And I do think that the lack of reliability in the MacBook keyboard, where a lot of people complain about dust getting in and all that, is competing with the lack of travel that is traditional in keyboards. And the question also is, does Apple not care about the one but cares a lot about the other?
It's my sense, maybe I'm wrong, and I don't talk to enough people, but that most people, surprisingly, like my wife, don't mind the lack of travel, but everybody who has a stuck key is going to mind that.
Right. Well, and I think that may be the truth, is that we may complain about the lack of travel.
You're all writers. You're all banging away at the keys.
It's our instrument of choice.
Also defined as people who use keyboards.
Well,
I don't like it. I don't like it. In fact,
I don't think that I have never. I shouldn't say never, but I have very, very rarely talked to somebody who said that. I just switched the new MacBook, and boy, that new keyboard is much better than the old one. If you give me the opportunity to buy a MacBook that had the old keyboard in it, I would say no, because I love this new one so much. It's better than I thought it would be. I guess I can live with it. Or the stuff that I'm getting with my new 2018 MacBook Pro is worth giving up a more comfortable keyboard. Really, and Jason makes, of course, the critical point that this is just a patent. But I'm amazed that they're even continuing to go down this path. This is definitely the Wile E. Coyote of human interface engineering. That if you just keep failing and failing and failing, just fix all the things that you keep failing at until this is one big 10-layer burrito of fail. Or you could just simply say, now let's see, what the problem here, let's go on the whiteboard, is that we want a keyboard that feels natural, doesn't get broken, has resistance against dust. It looks like we're actually looking at the keyboard we had the first time 4 years ago.
Yeah. But
I don't think it's. I mean, honestly, the current keyboard is a pile of garbage as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't add any features that affect consumers. It's all for Apple, and so.
But I'm sitting next to two guys
choices
using iPad Pros with Apple's keyboard, which is not the greatest.
I prefer this to the MacBook keyboard by far.
What? Wow.
But I like the idea that Apple and other tech companies say, let's not just accept that the current whatever is good enough. What could we reinvent this? Could we make a better mousetrap here? And Apple clearly is trying that with the keyboard. Well, and the problem is, do they start believing their own PR and they're like, no, we've really reinvented the keyboard? And I think it's exacerbated by the fact that on a PC laptop, if you don't like the keyboard on one company's laptops, you can buy a different company's laptops. On MacBooks, there's only one manufacturer and there's only one keyboard now. There's only one keyboard, which means it really has to have broad appeal. And I do know people who like this keyboard, or at least profess to like it. But I also know a lot of people who hate it. And polarizing is not what you want in the only keyboard that is purchasable for an entire laptop line. And that's where
I just think it's incredible. You can't even buy an external keyboard made by Apple that doesn't have this cockamamie super flat design. And it's like that's where every joke that we've had to suffer since day one as Mac users about, Apple, they're all about style over substance. We say, no, it's not. The Macintosh, it looks stylish, but it's also a very powerful computer. When it comes down to, again, an external keyboard that can be as big as anybody wants it, you don't have to put these crappy flat keys on it, but Apple decided to put these same crappy flat keys on it. That's style over substance. And that's everything that we've been making fun of for 10 years.
Yeah.
Well, and I do think as a creative professional, what those keys mean to us changes every app that we jump into. And I can see that as I would be interested in something, not as what I write in, but as if I'm jumping from editing to 3D to something else, having those keys actually change their display. Rather than, a lot of us have had those little rubber things that you put over top of your keyboard that is like now your Final Cut keyboard or your Cinema 4D keyboard or your Illustrator keyboard. But imagine them all changing, that entire interface changing every single time. And if you got rid of the ridges of the keys, I could see an argument of, well, I could just change the whole interface. Like I'm touching things, I have little virtual dials, or I have, something like that all kind of become part of that. I know that one of the things that we've built is stuff that integrates with two different touch screens. So your one screen's controlling the other screen, and you're able to design that interface with a lot more freedom. I'm not saying that that's what I want for my day-to-day laptop, but I can see how a conversation around that could generate this idea of moving to a glass top.
See, that's the difference that I'm talking about. If you decided Intel's been trying to get manufacturers interested in that kind of a thing, where you have a notebook that's two glass panels, one of which can be a keyboard when it needs to be, the other, or could be just another touch surface if you need it to be. At least you're saying that yes, we're taking away from you this beautiful natural feel mechanical keyboard, but we're also saying that when you're gaming, you can actually have a game controller there, or you can have a jog shuttle, or you can actually, when you want to read a comic book, you can have 2 pages of a book in front of you when you open it this way. What I always get what I think is a hard and fast rule is that if you take something away from me as a hardware manufacturer, you have to give me something back in its place. And if the answer to the question, why did you make this change, is that because we think stylishly it looks better, or because that allows us to save a manufacturing step and you're not making it cheaper for me to buy in return, that is not don't make me solve an Apple problem. That sounds like an Apple problem. You solve it and you give me a real keyboard. You don't make me have to suffer because you don't want to make your baseboard 2 millimeters thicker, or you don't want to figure out a way to put a really good keyboard in the same space. And to what Jason said again, I had a little bit of a scare a couple months ago where there was a possibility that my MacBook Pro, my 2015, was broken. I knew it was just a storage module that could just swap in. It'd be good. But if that didn't fix the problem, I was going to be screwed, because there's no way I could buy a new MacBook. And I knew exactly which model of Windows 10 notebook I would probably have to swap it with, in addition to buying a new couple of Mac Minis around the house to replace the function of the MacBook Pro, because instead of one machine that can do it all for me, which would be the MacBook Pro, the fact that this is a terrible keyboard that I don't like meant that I could switch over to a Lenovo Carbon X1, which has a magnificent keyboard that Apple hasn't been as good as for more than 5 years. I don't think these are choices that Apple would be making if they were actually competing for consumers. When they know that it's not, are we making a keyboard as good as the one we're replacing? It's a question of, I know it's not as nice as the one that we're replacing, but is it so bad that someone's going to switch from Mac to Windows?
But I think it's more than just switching. It's also, the same problem they're having with the phone is just upgrades. And so how fast we upgrade. Like I'm still hanging on to my 2015 because I really want my MagSafe. Like, and it's not, and inserting something into the USB-C is not enough. I travel a lot, and I use that. The MagSafe is the thing. All the other stuff doesn't matter to me, but the MagSafe was like where the line was, and I haven't upgraded yet. And I think that, but that costs them money. When I don't, when I have 40 laptops, within the company, it's not like us deciding we're not upgrading is not a trivial, number when it comes to that, and because we just don't want to give that up.
I still use the keyboard you recommended, Andy, years ago, Das keyboard.
That's what I have
on my iMac Pro. And on my other Macs, I'm using these code keyboards from WASD, which I really like. And now I know they've added some colored key combinations, which I'm thinking.
I'm envious of Jason's little mini keyboard and its color combination.
Is that a code? What is that? I like the clicky.
This is a Leopold, but it's a clicky keyboard.
Clicky.
It's for later.
Probably cherry switches. We'll talk about it later.
He's got a cherry brown.
We even can talk about the cherry colors.
Yeah. But it's funny that this iPad keyboard is using the butterfly switches.
Why do you like it more?
It has a different feel.
Is it more travel?
It is. I think it's not. But it doesn't have it.
I built a 20-page document in Pages with this.
I don't love it.
To me,
it's fine.
It doesn't have the dead stop that the laptop keyboards have. It's got a little more give when you're
little spring to it. Yeah. I mean, everybody's different.
My MacBook Air, the new 2018 MacBook Air, is to me just enough above acceptable that I can use it.
I think their third take at this keyboard is definitely better than the first two. I keep coming back to the fact that Apple's the solo vendor in its market, and as a result, you need to make a keyboard that's not polarizing. It's got to be crowd-pleasing. Everybody's got to find it okay. And what they did is they made a keyboard that I think a third of the people like, a third of the people don't care, and a third of the people hate. And that's a problem because a third of your market can't buy a laptop keyboard that they like.
And most likely that third of the market are the power users that are really connected to you more than anyone else.
Because we all have opinions about keyboards, right? That's why they make a billion different keyboards. The problem is Apple is the single vendor, and you got to get the MacBook keyboard right. Well, and it has to be right for as many people as possible, acceptable for as many people as possible.
But then and sometimes I wonder how important it is to them, because I know that my behavior at this point is that I go home and I work on my iMac, and I take my iPad Pro around, and I open up my laptop when there's just something weird that I can't quite connect. I haven't figured out how to connect to my iPad, but that's about it. I mean, it's just like, compatibility with some file, or I have to open up, do this thing, or I have to do a quick edit with Final Cut. But I think that, and I don't know whether Apple looks at that as a trend or not, but to me, there's my work at home, and then there's my iPad for literally 95% of my time that I'm outside of my house.